Well, good morning. This is in Roland Crane. It's the morning of, what is it, Tuesday. It's got to be the, I've lost track of days. It's got to be the 20th of February. And we're a bit rushed this morning, and that's why we're just a little bit late going live. Unfortunately, our surfer from Tinker Lane has yet to be interviewed at Mansfield Police Station. So we're actually heading down that way now because he should be in court later this morning. So unfortunately, here we are back at the gates of Tinker Lane, and there's just myself and Louise Hammond here. But we're not here for much longer. But hopefully the local community, particularly the people from Blythe and Retford, some of them will be coming down here later today to monitor what's going on here. And let's just understand how important this is, because we really started maintaining a presence here just on Thursday last week, and we saw the blatant and flagrant breaches of the traffic management plan. To be fair, the local authority did send down their representative. They did insist that IGAS build enough roadway to be able to turn the vehicles around. The vehicles were coming out and dumping mud all on this A634 main road, a major hazard to motorcyclists, even though there's a temporary speed restriction of 30 miles an hour in place. And fortunately, once again, it's down to the protection community that the council have now insisted that a wheel wash be put in place, and all of the vehicles have the wheels washed before they come out onto the main road. So it is really, really important that we have the monitoring here. And obviously, if anything else occurs like yesterday, where obviously somebody took advantage of the surfing opportunity, then so be it. But right now it's a nice morning. It's a little cool, but it's a beautiful morning to observe the mother frackers perpetrating their ecocide here in the countryside of Nottinghamshire. Although, I'm probably less than half a mile or so from the community that I can just see across the field there, and yet people seem oblivious here in North Nottinghamshire to the likely effect on their water. We know a number of people, particularly around the Misson Springs area, do still get their water from boreholes. Well, that ain't going to be for much longer, is it, if IGAS actually do perpetrate the frack that they have every intention of doing later this year. So meanwhile, anyway, let's take a look at a few bigger picture issues, because the title of today's live stream is "Come on, Theresa May, tell us what you really fracking well think." Because right now you are the master of mixed messages, and of course people can see this in the complete disarray of your government, and in particular your lack of leadership. And somebody pointed out to me the remarkable similarity between, physical similarity that is, between Theresa May and the lady who appeared in an Ariel washing powder advert some 40 odd years ago. Is it one and the same person? Well, check out the Ariel TV ad and tell me what you think. And you know what, Theresa, your performance was far better, if it was you, in the Ariel TV advert than it is in Parliament, because basically you're a disgrace, you're a joke, and the British public have zero confidence in you. And if you went to an election today, you know fine well that you would lose your majority, despite your tame media trying to paint Jeremy Corbyn as a former spy. The reality is that the increasing numbers of the British public that are able to discern for themselves, they know that this is a crock or an exaggeration. So the reality is that you will be judged by your track record, which is that you are deliberately destroying the civil fabric of this country. And unfortunately, of course, at the moment, I'm very much focused on this issue, but I seem to be doing it with some effect, because I was blocked by Facebook over the weekend. That block was lifted last night, and then this morning I made a couple of posts on a couple of groups, and another block was put in place until next week. So that's obviously indicative of the concern that somebody has about the information that we're putting out there right now. But let's go back to Theresa May for a second, because, you know, back in 2016, she was offering bribes to the communities, and we've seen Quadrilla, of course, sharing around the pieces of silver to the members of the local community, basically to shut them up, basically to buy their acquiescence. And you know, I hope these people feel really proud that the few pounds that they've accepted from Quadrilla is a pittance compared to the loss in the value of their property. And in fact, just a few days ago, a lady came to speak to us at Misson Springs who'd been trying to sell her house just up the road from the well site, and she was very, very upset because she thought she'd sold the property, but she'd just been advised by the estate agent that her buyers had pulled out solely on the basis of the fact that iGas were down the road and had every intention of fracking. And this is, of course, the case that we see everywhere else where these people want to put their bits in the ground. So, you know, the bribes that you were offering, you know, people who are desperate might take it. But, you know, the vast majority of people know precisely why that was offered. But then, you know, let's roll the clock forward about a year, and in October 2017, you said there will be new proposals to support the fracking agenda, and you insisted that it's good for the UK. Well, only a sociopath could ever believe that, because anybody who thinks that what's happening in the US right now, what's happening in Australia, is good for the residents who live in those areas is actually living in another version of reality, a reality where, you know, they don't give a damn about the health or the ecology of the environment there, because, you know, these vast tracts of land in the US have been effectively destroyed, and the same in southern Queensland, but you know, where the population density in these areas is generally much, much smaller than it is here in the UK. So that was really the last big push that you had, and of course we do see that you're looking to change, or someone's looking to change, the government's tracking surveys to try and make it look like whatever a person says, then they're in support of fracking. But, you know, Greg Clark appears to have done the right thing. Now, we know that he was under a lot of pressure to go against his better judgment, but he did do the right thing. And of course, he actually simply insisted, rightly so, that Third Energy show their full accounts. And when eventually they did, I'm sure he probably nearly spat out his tea as he worked through it, because with his background, he would have known very, very well that what he was looking at was a work not only that was quite probably total fiction, but even if it wasn't fiction, then what he was looking at was gross incompetence. And you know, really what is essentially a Ponzi scheme, an offshore Ponzi scheme set up to filch from the UK. So obviously what we see at Kirby Misperton right now is Barclays Bank trading as Third Energy, beating a not too hasty retreat, because they're still claiming that, you know, they'll be back in September. Good luck with that. But nonetheless, they are basically gone. They are history. And you know, we've got 4 local authority decisions since the turn of the year, and you know, 2 of those were Tories and 2 Labour. And in Lancashire, the Tory Trade Council, the Tory County Council rejected the revised traffic management plan that Quadrilla had submitted in an attempt to get back to Rossiter and to initiate activity there, a second pad from Prestonwood Road, where, let's not forget, that Quadrilla are now fast approaching the end of the 14th month in a 6-month project. So well done, Quadrilla, and you're not at terminal depth yet. You've still got some way to go, so you're some way away from even testing the integrity of the well that you've drilled. So the council there obviously making the right decision, and that was a unanimous decision. Then we have Rotherham Metropolitan Borough Council, which is Labour held, and there was a unanimous decision there to oppose INEOS's application to drill and frack within the borough boundaries. And then we had Cheshire West and Chester Council, which is Labour, and that was unanimous in their rejection of iGas's application to go back to Ellesmere Port. And then finally, Derbyshire County Council, which is Tory held, and that was 9-1 in their vote to resist INEOS's application to establish a well site on the northern boundaries of the county. So we have 4 local authority votes, 3 of which were unanimous. The other one was only a single vote in favour of supporting the unconventional gas industry. So there's the tide turning there. And now subsequently we've had the revelation of 3 reports really from either government agencies, government departments or government commission, which would suggest that all the advice and guidance to the government is, look, pull the plug, get out, because this ain't good for the country and basically it isn't going to work. You know, we had the Greenpeace Unearthed team who managed to get their hands on this report that was apparently submitted to the inner cabinet back in 2016. Now this was, you know, just a few months after the DEFRA report had been released in its unedited version, unedited glory, which had initially been redacted in some 80+ places, and of course the whole section on the impact on rural properties had been deleted. Well, that report didn't do the government any favours, and so when they commissioned this second report, which seemed to support the DEFRA report, what did they do? Hide it, bury it. Well, Greenpeace managed to get their hands on it, and that is now in the public domain. And then we have Refine, which is a independent group funded by the oil and gas industry, based at Durham University. And in their recent report, they effectively alluded to the observation that the likelihood of this industry really making any significant contribution to the economic well-being of the country is pretty slim. And then last but by no means least, we have the Environment Agency. Now, I encourage everybody, particularly those that are going to go along to the Environment Agency's drop-in meeting down in Dorking in a few weeks. I would encourage everyone to read this, because, you know, when I've attended these drop-in meetings with the Environment Agency, they just stand there and they blag, you know, and they literally make it up as they go along, you know, because they're there to try to smooth the way for the corporations to establish their ugly footprint within the community. And now this report that has been released by the Environment Agency actually outlines all of the risks associated with this industry, and it alludes again to the observation that basically, you know, the risks are such that the Environment Agency just doesn't have the resources to be able to manage it, and the likelihood is that there will be spills, you know. And if we look at, of course, what's happening in the US right now, and you look at the history of what's occurred in the US, then, you know, the reality is that there will be problems onto, there we go, oh dear, oh dear, and I'm doing a live stream. Anyway, so do take a look at this Environment Agency report, because what I sense here is that 3 reports coming out at a time, hot on the heels of 4 local authorities, 3 of which unanimously rejected the applications from the unconventional gas industry. The tide is very much turning. So what are you going to do, Theresa? Where do you really stand? Because, you know, you owe it to your corporate supporters to tell... We'll get back, there we go. You owe it to your corporate supporters to pull the plug now. Because, you know, iGas have a reasonable business extracting conventional hydrocarbons from a number of well sites around the country. And you know, here what they're doing is they're throwing money, literally and metaphorically, down a black hole. I believe that the vast majority of people know this industry is never going to become established in the UK. And you know, had the frack gone ahead at Kirby Misperton, then the level of awareness around the country would of course have gone exponential. But you've bought a bit more time. So I think we are in the twilight months of the unconventional gas industry in the UK. But don't take your foot off the gas. Don't for 1 minute think that anybody can sit back and rest on their laurels and just let this die naturally. It's not going to die naturally. It needs to be stamped on. It needs to be snuffed out. And it needs to be snuffed out in such a way that it will never ever return, and we will never again face a threat like this. And of course, let's not forget that many of these licenses across the north of England require the license holder to drill at least one well of 4,500 meters in depth. This is way beneath the level of the Bowland Shale, and it's my conjecture, and has been for the last 3+ years, that this industry is still a bit of a red herring to distract people from the real agenda, which is to create a network of deep boreholes for the disposal of toxic nuclear waste. Creating a network across the country so that there wouldn't be a cancer cluster in one particular area. The health impact would be right across the country, and because there would be no requirement under the Infrastructure Act modifications for the local authorities or anybody else to be consulted about what's being disposed of in these wells, then it could just be dismissed as something other than the toxic waste that's been disposed of in these wells. So if you want to shut down and make sure that we shut down both the unconventional gas industry and any prospect of surreptitious disposal of toxic nuclear waste in a network of wells right across the country, then get involved. And whatever it is, whatever skills you have, whatever abilities you have, whatever time and other resources you have, particularly if you are retired, because the retiree community is very, very important in this campaign, as we've seen particularly at Crawberry Hill in 2015. So that's really about it for today. We've got to head down to Mansfield now to support our surfer from yesterday. And meanwhile, you know, if you are in the North Nottinghamshire, and particularly if you're in the Retford and Blythe area, then it's very clear that we need to collectively be making a little bit more effort in raising awareness in these communities of what is intended to be perpetrated literally in their backyard, and explain to them the risks of this industry and what the legacy is likely to be if this isn't stopped. Meanwhile, Theresa May, it's time to get off the pot, and it's time to tell the country and the industry what you really fracking well think. So meanwhile, you have a great day, and Louise and I, come and say hi. We're off to Mansfield to go and rescue Lance.
We are, yes. It might be a long day.
From his kidnappers.
Yeah, release the hostage.
Release the hostage. So, but we'll be back here tomorrow, yes?
Yes, yes,
and
we will.
We'll be monitoring what's occurring. So if you're in Nottinghamshire and even South Yorkshire, just because it's across the border, unfortunately, you know, the chemicals and in the mix that they pump into the geology doesn't recognise county borders, and South Yorkshire is just a few miles away in that direction and that direction. So, you know, the people of South Yorkshire, don't think for 1 minute because there's a county border between you and the Tinker Lane and Miston Springs well sites that this won't affect you. This is a national issue, and it's certainly an assault on the East Midlands and the north of England, and unless you get involved, then unfortunately the prognosis is not good. We'll catch you tomorrow. Thanks for joining us this morning. And please, I'm blocked from sharing on Facebook, so anything that you can do or want to do to help get this word out, then that would be very, very much appreciated. Thanks very much indeed. Take care now.
Bye-bye.